It's Talking Reds. I'm Craig Hannan. I'm joined with Ian Ryan today. It's going to be a little bit different. We're pushed for time, so we're just going to do it in one. It's not going to be two segments, no newspapers, just straight through and straight through. I was just saying there off camera, I feel as if I need to go to the gym a bit if I'm going to be in this with you. And do you know what I mean?
Like, up, you can't tell.
In the summer, I'm going to be in trouble. When you're in the t-shirt, I am in trouble. The first thing we're going to talk about, the match. We were at the match at the weekend, Liverpool Legends versus Bayern Munich. It finished 5-5. It was absolutely wild, to be honest. Ian, Liverpool went 3-0 up. It must have been like 3-0 up within the first 20 minutes or something. And I was sat beside Sean Walsh, who's just behind camera, and at that point he said to me, "This Bayern Munich team are shit." And then they come back and they were 4-3 up.
Walsh, you know. To be fair, I mean, in terms of like that type of game, a friendly and stuff, it was pretty good, wasn't it? It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I mean, 5-5, you can't argue with that. I think the highlight though for me is still John Aldridge coming on and absolutely hitting the deck within about 20 seconds.
Twice.
And then getting up and then hitting the deck again within 20 seconds. So, poor old Aldo, 59. The years have not been kind.
I love when that happens, and the first time he laughed at it, and then the second time it happened, he was like looking at his studs and everything, as if it just wasn't the fact that like his brain feels younger than his body does. I think that's the thing. Yeah, absolutely. The legs are weak, and McManaman's reaction on the bench was probably the best. To be fair, they were absolutely pissing themselves. It was reminiscent of Klopp when Lucas Leiva had that shot, wasn't it? Where he's laughing at it on the bench.
It was.
But yeah, it was brilliant to see the likes of Xabi Alonso and Steven Gerrard as well. I'm sure they enjoyed playing with each other. And yeah, there were loads of goals. I think the crowd obviously enjoyed it. There seemed to be a younger audience. It seemed to be loads of kids in the ground, which was brilliant. And you know, at that age, you just want to see goals, don't you?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best things about the game was the fact that it was a different type of crowd. You know, it was people who probably couldn't normally get to the match, and they've got a chance to see some lads. And we touched on that on Friday's show. You know, albeit lads who maybe aren't at the peak of the powers, but in terms of the skill level, it's still there. The pace has maybe gone a little bit, and in terms of Aldo, his legs have well and truly gone. But it was good, and I think you're right. Alonso was probably the star man, wasn't he? He has that little mistake where he kind of sets up by, doesn't he, by mistake. But apart from that, he was a bit of a Rolls Royce. But we said on Friday's show, how long would it take for someone to put a shout out about these lads could still do a job in the Premier League?
It was amazing.
It did not take long for the first person to say the likes of Alonso, Gerrard, he'd still be starting week in, week out. Not sure about that, lads, to be honest.
They wouldn't. They're playing against like 55-year-olds in centre midfield. Yeah. And yeah, the pace was slow, but you know it's going to be slow. And like even I saw after the game, we saw some of the players come through the mix zone, and Lothar Matthäus was saying that's the first time he'd ever played at Anfield, and he was obviously like genuinely excited. You saw him taking selfies, and that's Lothar Matthäus.
And he played for ages as well. He stayed on for fair play. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a good day, and as I say, I think, you know, for people who don't normally get a chance to go to Anfield, it was a cracking kind of match in terms of, you know, loads of goals, 5-5, it kind of, you know, twists and turns and stuff, and it was a good laugh as well, and obviously all in good cause. So yeah, well worthwhile.
Yeah, it was all for the LFC Foundation as well, and they help local initiatives around the Anfield area, which is so it's obviously a really good cause. I think after the game, quite a few of the players were quick to talk about that. Saw Luis Garcia come through, Dirk Kuyt, and Dirk Kuyt was immediately saying that the main reason why we're here, it's brilliant that we get to play on Anfield again, we get to play for old mates, but the reason we're here is for the LFC Foundation. So that was really nice to see. We also saw Xabi Alonso as well, who, like, his glorious beard.
Did a few words, didn't you, mate, as well?
We did, yeah, just chatted to me at Xabi, you know what I mean? And he was, to be honest, he was dying to get away from me. I think he went to walk away, and I just shouted at him. He came back, thankfully, and then he just wanted to get away. I think he just wanted to get home. I think everyone wanted to talk to Xabi Alonso, and I think he was just done in.
I thought what was really good as well, I mean, if you look at some of the kind of, I suppose, kind of after-match comments from certain players, and McAteer put something out there as well, I don't know whether you saw it, but he talked about the fact that he felt like a million miles away from being a Liverpool legend, but the crowd made him feel like one on that day. And and you can see how much it meant to players like the likes of McAteer, the likes of Fowler, the likes of Reese to go back and just pull the shirt on again.
Kavami.
And Kavami as well.
Kavami scores it.
Where did that come from, by the way? The absolute belter from Kavami. So
again, I'm going to throw Sean Walsh under the bus. Sean Walsh said to me that Kavami looks...
He's getting a proper shoe.
Walsh, he said that Kavami looks as if he'd never played football before. And he scores the equaliser.
An absolute belter. Yeah, it was a belter.
footballer, but yeah, it was a good day had all round. On to the goalkeepers. Simon Mignolet has been talking. I don't know whether this is on international duty or not. It's just about conversations that he's had with Jurgen Klopp. Yeah. Obviously, he's been dropped. Loris Karius has been number one for us since the Man City game in January. He said, I've had a few conversations with the manager in the past about various things, and I'm always open, and so is he. You know how he is. You always have to be ready for whenever the chance comes along, and that is the only thing you can do. He's getting sold in the summer, isn't he?
There's no doubt about it. I think the whole goalkeeping thing is dead interesting because, you know, from a Liverpool point of view, what does Jurgen do in the summer? Does he still maybe look to go into the market? I think I'd still have one eye on doing something around the goalkeeping situation, but there's no doubt about it at the minute. Karius has come in and he's done really, really well. And I think, you know, from my perspective, I was done with Mignolet. I think he'd had enough chances to go out and prove himself. And don't get me wrong, there were certain games where, you know, he played well and he's made good saves as you'd expect him to. Any goalkeeper would do at this level. But I think over a period of time, he's proven that he's just not quite good enough for this football club. And that's not to say he can't go on and play well elsewhere. And there's probably a club for him. I'd say maybe, you know, a club who's maybe round about 8th, mid-table, lower half of the Premier League, and no doubt he'd go there and he'd do a good job, and his mistakes wouldn't necessarily be analysed in the same way that they are playing for this football club. And I think to play for Liverpool in goal, you need a certain character about you, but in terms of being tested, there's quite a lot of the time where you're just there in goal and nothing's happening. Yeah. And you've got to be able to spring into action and react to those kind of moments where a goal or an opportunity happens. So concentration levels are going to be really, really high. And I always felt that with Mignolet, that maybe just let him down ever so slightly. Yes, he was capable of pulling off some really good saves, and we've seen it. You know, we think back to the Stoke game towards the end of last season, he makes that double save and it was quality. Yeah. But they win all that often for me, and as I say, there was just too many where he let you down at crucial moments. So
I think we've had him long enough now, and we've given him enough chances. And I think the thing with Mignolet has always been that, you know, he could have 4 or 5 good games, but you know what's round the corner, you know what's coming next. And you know, there was a lot of discussion on Talking Reds as well around January and even before that, when Klopp was you know, changing the keepers quite a bit, and that told its own story. And that, you know, he wasn't sure who he wanted to go with. He's now decided to go with Loris Karius. I wasn't sure about that at the time because I didn't think Loris Karius was as good as Simon Mignolet based on the performances that he'd had for Liverpool. But I think he's rose to the challenge so far, and I think you can see him progressing and his confidence getting better. You know, he's getting more confident with every game, and that's obviously going to happen. And yeah, you know, that's what we want to see, even if it means that, you know, we might still see a goalkeeper coming in this summer.
Well, I think that's the interesting point about this. You know, whether Jurgen still feels he needs to go into the market or not, you know, time will tell. I think in terms of Karius, he suits this football team far more than Simon Mignolet does. You know, in terms of a goalkeeper who's, you know, quick off his line, you know, his first thought is start an attack, you know. So that transition period from kind of back to front, Karius plays a huge part in that in terms of getting the ball out quickly. And he doesn't get it right every single time, and goalies who try and be on the front foot will sometimes make a mistake in terms of the ball might go out of play. But his first thought is that, and that's not Mignolet's first thought. And in terms of coming off his line as well, in terms of closing people down, being quick to and alive to the situation, again, Karius, he is that. You know, he can see straight away his first thought is come off my line. Again, you won't always get it right, but that's not Mignolet's first thought. You know, he is often stuck to his line, and you've seen it where even at set pieces he's been pinned dead easily and stuff. And I just think it's time now to move on with Mignolet, as I say. You know, he'll go on, he'll find a decent club, but in terms of Karius, I don't think he's come in. He's not let anyone down, and as I say, I think confidence is rising. Don't get me wrong, I think it helps that Van Dijk's playing in front of him. I think, you know, if Mignolet was sitting here now, he'd probably say, well, listen, now, if I had a centre-half who was a colossus playing in front of me, it would have helped me. Yeah. Because Van Dijk's a quality player, he helps the whole back four. So maybe there's something in that, but I think overall, right now, I think most fans are more than happy that Loris Karius is starting in goal and not Simon Mignolet.
There was a couple of stats come out at the weekend there that I saw. So Karius has played the Champions League games this season. Obviously, 6 clean sheets in the Champions League this season. That's the most by any keeper in the competition. Yeah. I also had a look. He's had 7 clean sheets since he was brought back in against City in all competitions. So you know, it's all positive for Loris Karius at the minute. The only name that hangs over his head is really Alisson. And every time I see Alisson on Twitter or any clips of him, he looks brilliant. I think if Alisson's on Liverpool's radar, I just don't believe for a second that 3 months of Loris Karius doing pretty well means that we just don't go for Alisson in the summer. I think the only way we're put off is the price tag. Yeah. And I think we've seen our own Andy Heaton talking on Twitter the other day about Roma having to having financial fair play and having to abide by that, and they're going to have to make sales this summer, so that might be one to look out for. I
don't think any fan would be disappointed if Liverpool brought Alisson in. Brazil's number one. He absolutely looks the part. There's no doubt about it. I think, your point's right about Karius. He's come in and over it. It's a small kind of sample, isn't it? Really, it's 3 months. He's done well. It feels like maybe a gamble if you just say, right, we'll go with him again next season. I mean, Jürgen's seen him every day in training, so he'll have a far more better idea than us. I think there was calls last year when Mignolet's form improved and people were saying, right, we don't need the goalie now. Mignolet sorted it. He's looking better. He's making better saves. He looks like he's kind of getting the Klopp way of playing. And I think a lot of people were kind of not necessarily fooled into it, but they kind of bought into that general chat that Mignolet would do all right and we'd get away with him for the season. That hasn't been the case. It's been there's been loads of positives this season, but one of the negatives was around the goalkeeping situation where you'd have to chop and change all the time, and no one quite knew who was going to be number one. And it wouldn't have helped the players, by the way, either. Yeah. Either goalkeeper wouldn't have liked that situation. But I think if Alisson comes in, me for one would be delighted with that, because he looks like a guy who could be your number one for 10 years. And yes, he would cost a lot of money, but if you break that down over 10 years, if he's going to be your main man for the next decade, then there's value in going out and spending a lot of money on a goalkeeper.
Definitely, we've seen the value in spending on the back line, and the goalkeeper would be the next one for me. The next thing, James Pearce poured hot water over the Werner rumours, which is a little bit devastating.
Doesn't do him any favours, does it, when he does that?
No,
what can he do?
Yeah, I never really know in terms of whenever it comes from the journalists in the local patch, whether it's a thing where Liverpool are trying to keep it quiet. We obviously heard that they're apparently not interested in doing business for Alisson if the price tag is what it is to believed. I wonder if this is all just negotiation tactics. But one of the interesting things that come out of the piece was that he said that Ryan Brewster, who's injured at the minute and is undergoing rehabilitation back at Melwood rather than the academy, they've promoted him to Melwood during his rehabilitation, and that's kind of a sign of what they hope is to come from Ryan Brewster and the sort of confidence they have in him to progress at the level that they hope. They say that he will be promoted to the first team after having ankle and knee operations. This is all despite the German outlets, and it went mad in Germany at the weekend. The rumours around Timo Werner and 90 million bid. That's interesting, isn't it? And it's very Klopp as well, in that he's willing to place the confidence on such a young player. He obviously holds him in such high regard that he's decided that he's going to be a first team backup for Firmino, because I think Firmino almost creates a problem for Jurgen Klopp, and that he's so good, but he's also so unique that. Well, who is second? Because Timo Werner's not going to come and be back up. He's one of the most highly rated prospects and players around the world. He's going to be leading the line for Germany at the World Cup, so he's not going to come in as backup. You can maybe talk about whether, if he was to come in, it would be a different formation. Maybe Klopp's thinking of alternatives next year, maybe 4-4-2, diamond, something like that. I don't know. How do you see it?
I think it's that interesting. I think, again, we kind of touched on it briefly, didn't we, on Friday, in terms of it does create a problem with Firmino being so unique. And I think, in many respects, the different types of players, Spurs have got a similar problem, because how do you sell it to someone and say, right, come in and be back up to Harry Kane? Well, if you're a top player, you don't want to be back up to Harry Kane, you don't want to be back up to Firmino. So, whilst I think Werner's got flexibility in his game in terms of he could go, in more of a wide area, I suppose. I think you're right. You've then got Salah and Mane to kind of contend with. So you feel that he's coming in very much as maybe back up as a starting point, which, again, that's a tough sell. So it's a tough one for Jürgen, because there's a balancing act there, and obviously you've mentioned Brewster, and he's got to have one eye on promoting youth, hasn't he, as well? And
definitely.
Otherwise, what's the point? But at the same time, those lads who are coming through have absolutely got to be good enough to be pushing for the first place. So it's one, but it's a balancing act. I think, me personally, I'm all for bringing young players through if they're good enough. You don't want to see them not get an opportunity, but at the same time, you want to make sure you've got enough quality there stocked up for and assault on 4 trophies next year. And I'm not saying we can go win 4, but you've got to be in it to try and win all 4 of them. I think, you know, who knows where the Champions League journey ends this season, but say for instance it doesn't happen and we don't win it, then next season feels big in terms of this squad of players, the manager. At some point they need to start winning some trophies. That's not me saying Jürgen's under pressure, absolutely not. But we do need to start winning stuff. I think as a group of players, for them to develop and grow and move on. And, you know, I always remember something some of the Chelsea players said back in the day when Mourinho first came in. That first kind of title, if you like, that first trophy was key, because then you kicked on as a group.
Yeah.
And you feel at some point that needs to happen. But it's a balancing act. I think for me personally, I still want to see the manager do business at that top end of the pitch, because I think we do need reinforcements. You know, you can't expect Firmino, Salah and Mane just to keep going next season.
I think he will, though.
Absolutely.
I think he will. I think the idea around the Werner links, or maybe not signing them, as James Pearce is saying here, is that if they can bring in a wide man who can maybe go in centrally and so on, they can play it around. That's 2 positions instead of the 1.
There's flexibility in that forward line as well. So I think we've mentioned it before. You know, the likes of a Mane, the likes of a Salah could go up in a 2 if they had to, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's definitely flexibility in terms of all those footballers have got it within their attributes to be able to play in different systems. I think the Pulisic link, which I expect will come back on the radar at some point, I think that's someone he definitely will have an eye on, because again he can operate in those wide areas, but he's a young player, so you know there'll be times where he'll understand not being in the first team, whereas maybe that's, and I'm aware as a young player as well, but in terms of up and coming, he's one I would see that would be right on the manager's radar.
Yeah, he seems like Danny Ings as well. Dom Solanke, you'd hope he would push on.
People forget about Danny Ings, you know, as I say, again, I think it might come down to Danny Ings next season, though. Does he want to hang around again, just get maybe 10, 15 games across all the competitions? This is a guy who's not played a lot in 2 years, so he may feel that he's got to move on and start playing football again. But then, does he want to be part of something potentially special and just play 10 or 15, or does he want to go and play for a mid-table team, maybe get 30 plus games, but no chance of winning something?
Yeah, another thing as well, Divock Origi to come back and Sturridge to be sold. I think Klopp hasn't made a decision on Divock Origi. So James Pearce says he's had a bit of a disappointing season, so we'll have to wait.
Can't say it, mate, to be fair. I think there was a time when Jürgen did seem to really like him, but I think, you know, Divock's one who will kind of, you know, will come back, but then they'll look to kind of move him on if they can.
Yeah. In the Daily Mail today, there was a brilliant interview with Brendan Rodgers that was done by Ollie Holt. He comes across really well, Brendan Rodgers. I'm a big fan. You know, he's the one manager that took us closest to the Premier League title. I think he gets a really hard time, not just within our fan base, but you know, on the internet. He's quite often the brunt of jokes, and they take the piss out of him, whether it's his teeth, his tan, the fact that he went through a divorce, his new girlfriend, whatever. He just seems to get a bit of an unfair time. He's doing a brilliant job at Celtic as well. He talks about that. He's asked about the likes of Joey Barton, who was one of those people taking the mick out of him, saying he was in a midlife crisis. He talks about that. He says that he talks about the reason he went through the weight loss, that both his parents had died at young ages, and he looked at them thinking that he didn't want to turn out like that, which is completely fair. He also talked about the Suarez stuff, about Suarez carrying the team, and he says some interesting things. He said that Pochettino's doing a brilliant job at Spurs, but he's got Harry Kane. Jurgen Klopp's doing a brilliant job at Liverpool, but he's got Mo Salah. But yet for some reason the 13-14 season happened because he's got Luis Suarez. And he had Raheem Sterling, he had Daniel Sturridge scoring over 20 goals, had his best season of his career to his date. He was just unplayable. He had Gerrard from deep, who also has one of his best seasons in the later stages of his career. And you know, that's not Luis Suarez. That's not just Luis Suarez. In the piece, he talks about how Luis Suarez himself would admit that it was the team, it was the system, it was the gong ho style, that all out attacking that sort of allowed Luis Suarez to play in the way he did. And one of the things that people forget as well is that in the last 3 or 4 months of that season, Suarez didn't actually score that many goals, did he? He sort of he didn't go off the boil, but he didn't score as many in the last 3 months of the season. So it wasn't all down to Luis Suarez. Brendan Rodgers surely takes credit for what was probably the most exciting. Well, it was the most exciting season being a Liverpool fan, you know, in my lifetime, in terms of the Premier League anyway.
Yeah, I think first of all, you're right to say in terms of the interview. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was really good. It kind of shows off the human side as well, which you don't often kind of always get to see, in terms of, players and managers. In terms of the Suarez thing, which he talks about, there's no doubt, obviously, having a player like Suarez is going to help massively, as it does having Mo Salah, as it does, he talks about Harry Kane and Pochettino, and obviously having boss players is going to help because, loads of teams have a best player. We talked about it before off air. So I think some of that criticism is unfair. He has to set the side up, and he does, to make sure you get the very, very best out of Luis Suarez, and that's evident because Suarez is brilliant that season, but the team as a whole is good. I think you could maybe look at what he did around the defence, and it was never quite good enough, I suppose. I remember looking at the kind of the Arsenal-Liverpool game where we absolutely battered them, and going forward that day were unbelievable, but looking at the defence, it was, I think we had Mignolet, we had Ali Sissoko, we had Kolo, we had Skrtel and Flanagan, and you're thinking, how did we ever get so close when we're kind of rocking out a defence like that, with all due respect. But I think in terms of the manager, he does get maybe a little bit too much criticism. I think that's fair. I think for me, he probably should have gone after the Stoke defeat where we get absolutely hammered. So I think there's a conversation to be had where you could say, did we keep him a little bit too long? Others might say, maybe he deserved a little bit longer given how close we got. But at the time, after that Stoke game, I felt it was right personally to kind of part ways and look to something new, which is what we've done. But there's no doubt, and I think, Brendan will get a chance again in the Premier League for me. I think definitely. I'd be very interested to see what a Brendan Rodgers could do maybe with Arsenal or someone like that, if that opportunity come up. But I think it would interest them. You've got to give them credit where it's due. The Scottish League, it doesn't get loads of credit because obviously it's a quite a rung or two lower down than where we are in the Premier League, even more than that in all fairness. But to go on that run he's had, I think it was 69 games unbeaten, you've still got to go out and motivate players.
It's still a difficult job.
You've still got to motivate players to go out and want to be able to stay unbeaten, because, I suppose you can just creep in where you kind of, you haven't got that kind of drive and desire in your football teams if you're playing in a league like that where you're the best side. So you have got to give him credit for that, even though he's not operating at the very highest level anymore. But finances are tight in Scotland as well. So in terms of competing in Europe or trying to, it's very, very difficult.
It's an easy job on the surface, but it's not because he has to win every single game. He mentions that in the piece, and I think
the fans have bought into him, Craig. What's interesting, if you speak to a Celtic fan or you listen to what Celtic fans are saying, he made going the match enjoyable again for them because they weren't getting good crowds. Their crowds had drifted to kind of 20-25,000. People actually want to go and see them play again now because of the style of play. So you've got to give credit for that. As I say, for me, it was the right thing to do to move Brendan on. I think he'd had his time, albeit he got us ever so close, and fans will always have fond memories of that season for obvious reasons.
Definitely. Well, he was a Celtic fan growing up in Northern Ireland, so he talks about working at Celtic as being a dream job. He says that the fact that he's given time to work with the players, coach with the players, and be part of a long-term project rather than, going to the Premier League and being given 6 games and then being given the boot. He says he enjoys that. He likes the fact that it's a different expectation. He likes the fact that home and away he's expected to win every game. Whether it's Rangers away, he's expected to win it. It's disappointing if they don't. He says in the piece that's different to the Premier League because Liverpool can go to United and get a draw away from home and it's a decent result. So he says it's a completely different expectation and a completely different job. And yeah, look, he's gonna end up in the Premier League at some stage. It's maybe a little bit early, but I think this time for him going back, he'll be going back with medals and with trophies in the cabinet. He'll be going back with an unbeaten record like he had, and he'll be going back with a lot more respect. And I think he'd be ready. I think he'd be more ready this time for a big job. He also talks about the fact that he knows now not to be complacent. He knows that you can do what he did in 13-14 with Liverpool, but one season later they want you out, and that's just the way it is for a Premier League manager these days. So yeah, look, I'll be excited.
Portrait in his front hall of himself, you haven't that?
He actually, I've got a quote,
that, but
that's another thing. The Being Liverpool documentary just didn't help him.
No.
If you haven't seen it, Google Being Liverpool Reddit, and it's on Reddit somewhere. Every single episode of it, the documentary where they followed the Liverpool team round during pre-season.
But he didn't want to do that, did he?
He didn't. I think it was an ownership thing. It was to sort of grow the brand in America, as horrible as that sounds, but that was the whole idea. I think it was on Fox Sports, and he got an unfair ride after that, and no new manager is going to look great in those circumstances, coming in and having cameras in the changing room in your very first match. He obviously gets beat away from West Brom in his first match, but it's really interesting, and it's just not. In my first 2 weeks in a new job, you just wouldn't want that, would you? So it was just a completely mad concept. But give it a watch. But he does actually say in that. He walks around his own house, he shows them around his house, and there's a portrait of himself.
It's a big shout, it's a big shout.
And I'm into it, I think. But he actually, there's a quote from the article that says, "I forgot to ask Rodgers about that portrait that hung on the wall at his Liverpool home. It turns out he had not commissioned it. Which was always the impression given. It was a gift from a charity for the disabled that he had forged close links with while he was Swansea boss. It had sentimental value. Sometimes even in football, things are not quite as they seem. So he didn't go out and buy a big portrait of himself. He didn't go and get it done. It was a gift given to him. But yeah, that was just a number of things after that documentary that sort of, he was the brunt of many jokes. But look, I wish him all the best. I hope he's back in the Premier League, whether it's with Arsenal next season, whether it's with someone further on down the line. But I definitely think he'll do a brilliant job. The last one, Watford's Adebayo Decore. He's come out at the weekend, Ian, and said it's a dream to play for Liverpool. I love this. I'd be fuming. Do you know what I mean? It always seems to happen in these little breaks when they've got, whether they're away on international duty or whether they're just a bit bored and decide that they want to say what other teams they want to play for. Yeah,
it happens a lot, doesn't it, during international breaks? I think in terms of Decore, I think he's an interesting player. I think we had a close look at him at Anfield. Only the other week, and I don't think he really covered himself in glory, if I'm honest, in terms of his performance that day. But I think there's definitely something there in terms of the player. I think early season, the likes of him and Richarlison were really, really good. I think Decore gets 7 goals, and certainly in the first half
top
of the
goal
season.
scorer.
Yeah, and some belters, by the way, as well. Yeah. He's hitting some belters there. So, I think Watford bring him in. They loan him out, I think, 2016 to Granada, I think, and then bring him back. And he's done well. So, he's 25 years of age. So, it feels like a good fit in terms of that. But I just don't know whether he'll be on Liverpool's radar. Maybe if Emre Can does leave, someone like Decore will come into the conversation. As I say, I certainly think there's a player there, but maybe looking at his Anfield performance, listen, it's one game, so you can't go off that. I was a little bit disappointed with him in terms of his impact, but I think overall this season he's done himself no harm, and as I say, I think he'll have his sights set on bigger things than Watford, so it certainly wouldn't surprise me if some of the bigger clubs come calling. I think he's been capped at under 21 level for France as well, so he's not a full international as far as I'm aware, but in terms of progression, he's on the right trajectory, and as I say, I've been quite impressed with certainly some of his early performances this season.
Okay, some of the shows that we've got coming out today, we've got the free show out. You'd think there wasn't that much to talk about. I've just seen Neil's agenda. It's it's a double A4 page full. It looks really, really interesting. So Jurgen Klopp had taken his coaching staff out to Tenerife, do a little bit of work together to talk about the last 3 months of the season. So they discuss what they might have talked about, what they might be looking at, and what their plans might be in terms of the end of the season and the summer as well. There's also a segment looking towards Man City and of course Palace before that, and then the rest of the season. What does the rest of the season look like? Tomorrow we'll have a very special Naby Keita documentary coming out, where we've talked to a Leipzig fan, we've talked to Mel Reddy, Melissa Reddy of Joe, who interviewed Naby Keita in the summer. We also have Raphael Honigstein as well on there, and there's a couple of other people who have forgotten, so that'll be really, really good. And then yes, AFQ football's out tonight as well. That's been Talking Reds.